He wants the F-35, and he's wanted that, and we're talking about that very seriously.
For the longest time, the United States asked Turkey to, first in the 2010s, not to buy the S-400 because it's a Russian-operated system, and two, after Ankara did obtain it in 2019, that Washington told Ankara that it would not be allowed on the F-35 program so long as it had the S-400. The issue here now seems to be that the Americans are okay with the Turks holding on to the S-400, provided that it's either not operational or perhaps as much as to say it will be in storage, that it will be in a place like Incirlik Air Base. At present, it's believed to be in Murted Air Base outside of Ankara. So the idea is to use a Turkish base, which also houses NATO personnel, including U.S. Air Force personnel, and that's in Incirlik. That would give the Americans at least some closure, if you will, to see where this is located. But offloading the system onto a third-party country or returning it to Russia is out of question, or at least it seems to be from the Turkish perspective for the time being. It would be hard to say that overcoming this issue is going to restore trust between Ankara and Washington, for the simple reason that Turkish-U.S. relations entered a downward trajectory way before anyone knew about the F-35 or the S-400 air defense system. We're talking about the U.S. occupation of Iraq in 2003 and the geopolitical challenges that brought to Turkey. We've seen the two allies fall apart in Syria over how to back the anti-Assad coalition. Of course, Turkey's relations with Israel deteriorating has also had a negative impact on Turkish-U.S. relations. So with respect to the F-35 S-400 business, their inability, and I should mention that we still haven't seen that this issue has certainly been resolved, because there's also the challenge of whether Congress will abide by whatever agreements President Trump and President Erdogan will make. But assuming that they do, this will only be one issue that will end up being resolved between the two NATO allies. What it signifies is that they're probably going to decide to focus on other geopolitical risks, the most important of which is Russia. Beside Russia, also the issue of all of the Turkic states of Turkestan in Central Asia, as it's more commonly called in the international scene, where Turkey could also help Western countries to balance against China. Although Turkey also wants to have good relations with China, so it is going to be an issue of balance, not necessarily a full restoration of strategic partnerships as we saw in the 20th century. From NATO's side, of course, it looks very unacceptable for the country with the second largest military in NATO to buy a Russian-made air defense system. Of course, the reason why Turkey had purchased this was also to correct Turkish-Russian relations in the aftermath of the Syrian conflict in the mid-2010s, and for Russian support to President Erdogan after the July 2016 coup. Its resolution signifies what I said earlier about U.S.-Turkish relations, which is that this will restore better relations at the political level between Turkey and its NATO allies, but also it would ease, in the event that CAATSA sanctions by the U.S. Congress on Turkey are lifted,